Hi guys, welcome to my channel. So today I just want to go over a few poisons or drugs that can cause pulmonary embolisms. I know I did a video in the past because we know Alex's cause of death was a pulmonary embolism. We don't know what Tammy's is yet, but we all are thinking that they did something to Alex and Tammy to cause their death. So we're all trying to look into what they possibly did. A lot of you guys gave me some ideas as far as what could cause pulmonary embolism. Plus I have been doing some research ever since Alex's autopsy came out. So I did a prior video about cyanide as one of the poisons that could cause a pulmonary embolism and how it's not traceable for very long. So it has a half-life of 10 to 30 minutes as a detoxifying mechanism. So within a few hours of a single ingestion, no cyanide can be detected since all of it is metabolized, unless death occurs first. It's just such a quick time period that they would need to test for it to be traced. So that's why, as far as Alex, maybe they didn't find it because you can't detect it after so long. But I'm not sure. I mean, the cyanide is one of them. Carbon monoxide is another. And another one, thanks to Heidi Lee, give you a shout out. But another one is organophosphate poisoning. I'll talk about that a little bit later on in the video. First, I want to discuss the malachite poisoning because a lot of people have been asking about that. So first, I want to let you know a few things that I found out on the malachite poisoning, and then we will get into the organophosphate and the case studies that I found and that Heidi found. Heidi Lee, she found one of them and sent it to me, so thanks, Heidi Lee. I know a lot of people have been talking about the malachite poisoning, and I'm trying to look into that one because of the rings. I mean, it has to have some kind of meaning. They both got these rings that aren't super expensive, but it probably has some kind of meaning. And what if that's how they're killing their zombies, like they would say, or Chad would try to convince Lori, oh, this is we're killing the zombies with this. This is a special stone here. Oh my gosh. But yeah, I mean, that it is poisonous, that malachite. There's different ways of using it for poison. But before I do a video on it, I've been looking into this for months now because a couple people have emailed me about this and about the rings and stuff, and it got me interested. And so I started looking into it, but the reason I haven't done a video on it yet is because it seems like basically the only way to kill somebody with a malachite, it's a slower process. So I was trying to figure out if there's any instances and how somebody would go about doing that in just a once type or a quick death. You know, I haven't been able to really find any info where it says that it kills you quick. It seems like it's a long process, which they could have been poisoning them slowly. That's why I'm trying to get all the facts straight before I do a video on it, but I am looking into the malachite. Okay guys, so I recorded the first part of this way like last week, but so I have kind of looked into a little bit of the malachite. I want to just share a little bit what I've found with you guys so far as the malachite poisoning. Okay, so I found basically a case of somebody who does lapidary work, that grinds stones and stuff, and I want to read you her experience, and then I want to read you some other people that also do lapidary work and their take on malachite toxicity. Okay, so this is from somebody who does lapidary work and their experience. I'm going to read this first. After a few months of cutting and grinding malachite, I began to experience a nasty and completely unexpected cavalcade of health problems. Coughing, hoarseness, difficulty in clearing my throat, breathlessness, and a dull ache in the pit of my lungs. A single heavy dose can cause crippling, lifelong problems. It attacks the lungs in a variety of ways. First, by coating the inner lining and blocking the transmission of oxygen into the bloodstream. Second, tiny sharp fragments slice and cut into the alveoli, which coat the inner lining of the lungs, causing irritation and inflammation. Fresh dust seems to be more harmful because the sharp edges have not had a chance to be softened by moisture. Some forms of rock dust are quite poisonous in and of themselves. Whether it is inhaled, ingested, or contacted by exposed skin, the effect can be injurious to your health. So that's somebody who's doing that for a living or doing, or even a hobby, but they're cutting and grinding malachite. You know, that's after months of doing it that this person is having these effects. So as far as that person's experiences, Alex and Tammy weren't grinding rocks, but of course the ingestion part, and that's where I'm having trouble finding cases where people ingested malachite. I mean, they talk about ingesting it can be poisonous, but there's no cases of that to study it. So that's where I'm having trouble, because they say don't make it into an elixir because some of the gems and stones you can make into elixirs. And they say, no, this has copper in it, you can't make it into elixir because it's toxic. But there's no cases where you could see what it does and how long it takes when you ingest it and how toxic it would be. So that's why I'm having trouble figuring out, like, would it take one elixir or how many elixirs would it take to build up a high toxicity? I don't know. So since the toxic mineral that's in malachite is copper, I looked up copper poisoning. And it's still not clear in the cases of copper poisoning how much it would take to build up. It seems like it would be a long process building it up in your system to cause a lethal dose. It's just still not clear. So, and I can't find any cases where copper poisoning would cause a pulmonary embolism either. How much a lethal dose is it a short-acting thing? From all the cases I've seen of copper poisoning, it was a slow buildup. So is there like a lethal amount that's like a one-time thing you could give someone? It's just there's no research on that as far as what I could find so far. I'm still looking though. I'm going to read you a couple comments referring to malachite toxicity by some rock professionals, people that do this for a living, whether they collect the rocks or if they're into lapidary work or whatever. So I'm going to read you some of their comments. Recently, we have seen a significant number of acicular malachite specimens available, and a certain amount of confusion as to the relative hazards of handling this material. It is well known in the lapidary world that malachite dust is a health hazard, and dust protection should be used when working the material. Extending this to mineral specimens appears to be a stretch, and I would think that the potential for toxicity of raw malachite as a mineral display specimen would be quite low. Any opinions on the subject or other reference material that I may be able to review would be appreciated. That was Joseph Oliveira, and then this is a thread, people responding. So this is someone else's response. Malachite could only hurt you if it is ingested. Consequently, the best advice is simply to wash hands after handling dusty specimens. The same advice you'd give someone with garden soil on their hands, or the dust from the vacuum cleaner bag, or after disposing of the cat's litter box. If the specimens aren't dusty, like a piece of malachite jewelry, for example, I wouldn't even bother with the hand washing. But actually doing the lapidary work, as you mentioned, is more dangerous and requires dust mitigation. But then you could say that for many other kinds of dust too, including organic ones. Dusts of all kinds are best kept outside the human body. After collecting for 53 years, the most danger I feel exposed to with my minerals is if I manage to drop one on my foot, or receive a cut from an extra sharp quartz crystal. However, there are some minerals that do require special handling. What people need to understand and appreciate is the chemistry of each mineral species. Yes, galena contains lead, but that does not make it dangerous because it is virtually insoluble under normal circumstances. However, mining around a lot of cerussite dust could have significant effects because the lead here is much more soluble. Other examples include orpiment and regar, because they are so soft and dust prone. It just comes down to informing oneself about what you have in your collection. I would be more worried about some of the uranium and thorium mineral species than most of the non-radioactive minerals. After all, just because information is available on the internet does not make it true or factual. I am reminded of the commercial with the young lady who continues to make the statement, after all, it is on the internet, so it has to be true, and then meets up with her French model boyfriend who is no closer to being a French model than me. Okay, so that was Les Presmick that said that. And then here's another person that's weighing in. They say some people get nervous about working with malachite too because malachite has copper in it. Copper is another element considered toxic in certain quantities if ingested. So that's what I want to find out. I can't find any research of what the quantities are that make it toxic. Like how much do you need to ingest to make it toxic? Or to make it enough where somebody could die from it. And I haven't been able to find the research on that because there's probably not much research on it because it's probably never really happened much. I mean, I bet you the only cases they have are people that do lapidary work and have effects from the dust. But as far as ingesting it, there's probably not much research. There's not much on it because it's probably rare. And if it does happen, it's probably not known. Like maybe the times that it could have happened in history, or maybe somebody did poison somebody with it. There's not really much research on it, because I am having trouble finding it, and that's why I keep putting off doing a video on it, because I don't know. Now, I'm not talking about the effects of people inhaling the dust from long-term exposure when they do lapidary work and stuff like that. There is some research about that, but I'm talking about ingesting it, like people maybe drinking an elixir or somehow ingesting it by drinking it, by just other ways besides the long-term exposure of people that are grinding the rocks. All you could find is, yes, it's toxic, but there's no, I always like to find the case studies and the proof and the research on it, and there isn't any. So anyway, let me finish this out. It says, these are elements you don't want to swallow. However, we hold pennies, right? I even swallowed a few pennies as a kid. And a penny is copper, just like the toxic mineral in malachite is copper. So how many times have you heard kids when they're younger swallowing pennies, and they didn't die? So, but I guess a penny is different than like copper broken down, like malachite, for instance. If you make an elixir and you dissolve it in the water and it's broken up where your body could absorb it, then that's different than swallowing a penny, and then your body isn't really breaking that down or absorbing any of it. It just comes out whole, so your body didn't absorb any of the copper. A toxic element is obviously much more dangerous if it's in a soluble compound. So I'm going to read something that the Rock Courier posted. So it says, yes, copper in its pure form is relatively safe unless you drop a heavy ingot on your toe. Many copper compounds are also relatively stable in ambient conditions. When you ingest or inhale them, the conditions are no longer ambient, and the acid in your stomach or fluids in your lungs may dissolve some of them, leaving the dissolved copper ions free to react with your precious bodily fluids, which is certainly the case with malachite powder produced by grinding wheels. I have never heard that breathing in malachite powder will kill you in a day, but it will certainly cause you substantial discomfort if not harm. Even a little malachite dust will leave a terrible, long-lasting taste in your mouth. Personal experience. And I can't imagine anyone working with malachite who would not go to substantial lengths to make sure they did not breathe the dust. Okay, so as far as that comment from the one before, not the Rock Courier, but the one I read before about eating pennies or swallowing pennies and it not harming them, but that does go back to what I said as far as, obviously, if it's not in a soluble compound, your body is not going to be able to absorb it and build up a toxicity if your body's not absorbing it. So I know it is different if you make an elixir and dissolve it in the water with the copper or the malachite, and then you ingest it and then it absorbs into your bloodstream, then that is different. So I think that's kind of the difference why you could have copper poisoning, but you could swallow pennies and not be affected. But anyway, so it says, so don't think you're doomed because you handled something that contains copper. Although an excess of copper in your system can be toxic, a certain trace amount is necessary for normal, healthy functioning. It's all a magical balancing act. Just use your own good judgment. And that source was from Hibiscus mooncrystalacademy.com. So the couple stories, the case studies of the people having lung issues from malachite are from them grinding malachite. So it's the dust that they're inhaling regularly as they grind. That's the only case studies that we have to study. The other, ingesting it, yes, it's toxic because it's copper, but we don't have any studies on that. No instances. I'm not saying it hasn't happened, but where they've studied it and they knew it happened and they could study the reaction. There's nothing out there. So, well, I guess I shouldn't say there isn't any. I just haven't been able to find any. Maybe there are some out there. If you guys have been able to find any studies, let me know. So remember, I'm looking for studies that show the ingesting of malachite, not inhaling the dust, or people that do lapidary work and they're grinding the stones and they're inhaling it. Not those studies. I'm talking about ingesting it, like drinking like an elixir, or somehow just ingesting it. That's what I'm looking for. I mean, maybe there are some like scientific journals or something where there are some. It's just as far as my searching. So there definitely probably could be some, but I just haven't found any yet. So I really can't say as far as the ingesting malachite because I don't have any research to go by. But if any of you guys have found any research, email me. I would love to see it. Okay, let's talk about organophosphates. So they're worldwide used as efficient insecticides in agriculture. The easy accessibility and high toxicity make them very powerful means for performing suicide attempts as a global medical problem. So I'm going to read you a case study on organophosphates causing a pulmonary embolism. So let me read you this here. So this is increased risk of deep vein thrombosis and pulmonary thromboembolism in patients with organophosphate intoxication, a nationwide prospective cohort study. See, this is why there's actually case studies on this, but on malachite there isn't. And I'm not saying that that doesn't mean that they didn't use malachite. Of course they could have. And it is toxic, but we don't know how toxic and how much they would have to ingest. So I don't know. It's hard for me to be like, was it malachite? Because I wish I knew more about it and how long they would have had to give it to them and how much and stuff. But anyway, let me read this article. Organophosphate, OP poisoning, is a critical cause of morbidity and mortality worldwide. We conducted a nationwide longitudinal cohort study to investigate the development of deep vein thrombosis, DVT, and pulmonary thromboembolism, PTE, among patients admitted with OP intoxication. We identified patients with OP intoxication by using the Taiwan National Health Insurance Research Database and enrolled 9,223 patients who were hospitalized for OP intoxication between 2000 and 2011. OP intoxication was diagnosed based on a clinical assessment serum acetylcholinesterase levels at the time of hospital admission. Each patient in the OP intoxication cohort was randomly frequency matched with 4 patients without OP intoxication based on their age, sex, and index year. 36,892 patients as control cohort, and all patients were observed from the index date until the appearance of a DVT or PTE event, or until December 31st, 2011. We analyzed the risks of DVT and PTE by using Cox proportional hazards regression models that included the demographic variables of sex, age, and comorbidities, hypertension, diabetes, cerebral vascular disease, heart failure, all cancer types, and lower leg fracture or surgery. The results revealed a significantly increased risk of developing DVT among patients with OP poisoning, but not PTE among patients with comorbidities. The OP poisoning patients compared with controls had a higher adjusted HR of 2.12, 95% for DVT. The results of this nationwide cohort study indicate that the risk of developing DVT is markedly higher in patients with OP intoxication compared with that of the general population. So that's that. I'm so mad because I found this study and now I forgot to save it. Shoot. And I have to hurry up and record this because my nephews are here and they're about to overtake the basement. So I don't know if I have time to find the study again, but it was basically a study of OP poisoning, how the poisoning actually mimicked a pulmonary embolism. Like on the x-ray it looked like a pulmonary embolism, but it was actually OP poisoning, organophosphate poisoning. So that was the best one too. So that makes me think that what if Alex really had OP organophosphate poisoning and they thought it was a pulmonary embolism, because it just says in the x-rays that like it could look like it. They could look the same. Let me see if I could find it real quick, guys. Okay, so I found another one real quick. This is a different one than what I found before, but hey, that even confirms that this is a more common thing. So it says organophosphorus poisoning presenting as pulmonary thromboembolism. So I'm not going to read it all because I don't want to bore some of you guys, but I'm going to include the screenshot so you guys could just pause it and read it, but I'm going to read some of it. I'm going to start in the middle of this paragraph. It says, we report a case of 37-year-old woman with history of consumption of organophosphorus compound. She presented with vomiting, drowsiness, poor response to oral commands, fasciculations, and shallow breathing. She was admitted and treated in ICU for 20 days, wherein her general condition improved. She developed respiratory distress and collapsed all of a sudden. On autopsy, she had a large immobile wall-adherent thrombus located in the pulmonary trunk extending into the right pulmonary artery. Left pulmonary artery showed emboli, and right coronary artery showed a thrombus attached to the arterial wall. Histopathology revealed multiple areas of infarction in lung and widespread toxic injury to hepatocytes, spleen, and kidney. We conclude that OP compound poisoning caused widespread endothelial damage resulting in pulmonary and coronary thrombosis leading to cardiac arrest. OP poisoning presenting as pulmonary thromboembolism has been described in a case report. Recently, a nationwide cohort study in Taiwan indicated that the risk of developing deep vein thrombosis is markedly higher in patients with OP intoxication compared with that of the general population. In this nationwide study, follow-up person years showed that patients with OP intoxication have a 1.55-fold increased risk of DVT compared with general population. So anyway, this kind of example how it's presenting, the poisoning is presenting as a pulmonary thromboembolism. And there was another case where it actually showed the x-rays and the pictures and showed you. That's what I wanted to really show you. But unfortunately, I forgot to save it. And now I can't find it in time because, like I said, I only have a short amount of time to record this before I get overtaken. That was my fault, guys. I wanted to show you the pictures and stuff, but I guess it's good that it happened because it forced me to even find another case study about it presenting as a pulmonary embolism, basically, or it's pulmonary thromboembolism. So yeah, it's pretty crazy stuff. So that, they said it's very easily accessible. The organophosphates, the insecticide, pesticide, I mean, people could get their hands on it very easily. It's a new thing that people are using to commit suicides. I mean, it's a common thing. So they would, if, you know, Lori and Chad wanted to look up what's something easily accessible that we could give somebody that maybe doctors and police, they wouldn't look for necessarily in an autopsy and could maybe mimic something else, then that would be a go-to. I mean, that would be a good choice for them. Especially they see, wow, people are using this to commit suicide, so they know it works. You know, there's case studies. That's why with the Malachite, without knowing the case studies, and if I can't find how much you would need to ingest for it to be a lethal dose of Malachite, and I've been researching for over a month now, then were they able to find that out? And I mean, they probably weren't able to find that out either. It would be like more a trial and error. And would they be willing to risk that trial and error for something that serious? Because what if it didn't work like they thought? And what if it did take months and Tammy or Alex was having symptoms way long before and then went to the hospital or doctor with these symptoms? Because it does take a lot. It does take multiple times in a long period, if it does. And then they find out that they're being poisoning. I mean, would they take a chance with the Malachite without there being any real case studies? I don't think. I mean, it just doesn't seem likely. Okay, so let me read you a little bit of the case study that Heidi sent me. It's another case study on organophosphate poisoning. So it says acute, or OP they call it, so that's organic phosphate, we'll just shorten it to OP poisoning, complicated with pulmonary thrombosis during the first week of poisoning. Okay, so there have been a few case reports of thrombotic complications in acute OP poisonings, as well as prolonged thrombosis preconditions in patients who survive this type of intoxications. The paper presents a case with pulmonary thrombosis that develops in the subacute phase of intentional acute OP poisoning. It's a case study with a person with the OP poisoning. So organophosphate is a chemical substance that is produced by the process of esterification between phosphoric acid and alcohol. Organophosphates can undergo hydrolysis with the liberation of alcohol from the esoteric bond. These chemicals are the main components of herbicides, pesticides, and insecticides. So there's some case reports where this poison, herbicide, pesticide, insecticide, this chemical can result in a pulmonary embolism. So Heidi sent me one of the case studies, so thank you, Heidi. And there's other things that you could look it up online and you'll be able to find some other instances where there's some kind of correlation between organophosphate poisoning and pulmonary embolism. So who knows? I mean, they could have got their hands on some insecticide, pesticide, herbicide. You never know. So organophosphates are typically colorless to brown liquids at room temperature. Some may be unscented, while others have a fruit-like smell. So yeah, it says the poisoning, first of all, can be short or long-term. It can be caused by large or small doses. The longer the exposure and the larger dose, the more toxic the effects. Well, duh. And then it says symptoms can occur within several minutes or hours of exposure. And oh my God, look how crazy this is. Wow, is this a sign or what? So this is a chart I found online. It has nothing to do with this case besides the poisoning. I mean, if that is indeed how they did kill Tammy and Alex, they make an acronym of the symptoms, and look what it spells out. Dumbbells. It's a nickname we've all been calling Chad Daybell, Dumbbell, and now Lori Daybell with the dumbbells. Both of them are dumbbells. Wow. Is that a coincidence or what? This chart has nothing to do with the case. I mean, it wasn't that they made this chart and put those symptoms in that order because of the case or anything. It's crazy. Let me know what you guys think of that. Is it a sign? Do you guys think that's what they used or just a coincidence? Organophosphates are one of the most common causes of poisoning worldwide. There are nearly 3 million poisonings per year, resulting in 200,000 deaths. So here are more of the symptoms of organophosphate poisoning. So narrowed pinpointed pupils, impaired blurry vision, stinging eyes, runny nose, watery eyes, excessive saliva, glassy eyes, headache, nausea, muscle weakness, muscle twitching, agitation, dizziness, disorientation, coughing and wheezing, sneezing, difficulty breathing, drooling, muscle twitching and tremors, muscle weakness, fatigue, severe vomiting and diarrhea, involuntary urination and defecation. Wow, yeah, remember Alex did do that. Remember Zulima's son said how he defecated basically. So convulsions, didn't he say he had convulsions too? I'm pretty sure. Sweating, it says include sweating. Yeah, I remember him saying he's sweating. Excessive body secretion, saliva, mucus and tears, irregular heartbeat, collapse. You definitely collapsed. Respiratory depression or arrest, and coma. Okay, so let me read you one more study I found on organophosphate poisoning. So this one the title is Fatal Cases Associated with Eating Chapati Contaminated with Organophosphate in Tororo District, Eastern Uganda. So background, it says few cases of organophosphate poisoning in developing countries have been investigated using clinical and epidemiological methods. On October 30th, 2015, 3 students at Makuju School, Tororo District, Uganda, died soon after eating chapati, locally made flatbread, from the same food stand. Ministry of Health investigated to identify the cause and recommend prevention measures. We defined a case as onset during October 30th through the 31st, 2015, in a resident of Mukuju town of greater than one of the following symptoms: excessive saliva, profuse sweating, dizziness, low blood pressure, constricted pupils, or loss of consciousness. We reviewed medical police records and interviewed survivors, healthcare workers, and police officers. We collected samples of implicated food for toxicological analysis. Autopsies were performed on descendants to identify the cause of death. Results: we identified 7 cases with 3 deaths. Case fatality ratio is 43%. Clinical manifestations included acute onset of confusion, 100%, constricted pupils, 43%, excessive saliva, 43%, and low blood pressure, 43%. All 7 cases had onset from 1600 to 1800 hours on October 30th with a point source exposure pattern. The 3 descendants each ate a whole chapati while the other 4 cases ate half or less. Autopsy findings of the 3 descendants indicated organophosphate poisoning. Toxicological analysis found high levels of malathion in leftover foods, 266 milligrams per liter in dough and 258 milligrams per liter in chapati, and malaoxon, a highly toxic malathion derivative. In descendants' postmortem specimens, mean levels of 19 milligrams per liter in the blood and 22 milligrams per liter in the gastric contents. There was a delay of 4 hours before the patients received appropriate treatment. Police investigations revealed that flour used to make the chapati was intentionally contaminated with an organophosphate pesticide. So I am going to kind of skip around on some of this and skip some of it. I'm not going to read the entire thing because it might get boring for some of you. So I am going to kind of skip around on a little bit. But if you want the whole copy and case study, just email me and I could send you the whole thing if you want to read the entire thing. Conclusion: the fatal outbreak of organophosphate poisoning was associated with consumption of roadside vended chapati made of flour contaminated with pesticide. Clinicians should be aware of symptoms of organophosphate poisoning and prepared to treat it quickly. Street vendors should carefully consider the source of their ingredients. An in-depth surveillance review of such poisonings in Uganda will guide policymakers in reducing access by criminals and accidental exposures for the public. So I'm going to skip some of this and just read a couple more parts here. So it says, food contaminated by organophosphates might have a chemical smell and bitter taste, although this depends on the amount of organophosphate. Organophosphates are one of the commonest agents of poisoning worldwide. There are an estimated 1 million organophosphate poisonings per year worldwide, with several 100,000 resulting in fatalities. Organophosphates are frequently used in suicides and homicides. Unintentional organophosphate poisoning most commonly occurs among agricultural workers or children. poisoning has also been caused by ingestion of contaminated flour as well as leafy vegetables on which the organophosphates were used. Organophosphates can survive for long periods in the environment and can withstand high temperatures during cooking. Organophosphate pesticides are available in both powder and liquid forms. A recent study reviewing pesticide poisoning cases treated in health facilities in Uganda found that organophosphate pesticides accounted for 73% of the poisonings. So methods. We defined a suspected case as sudden onset of foaming at the mouth of saliva, low blood pressure, loss of consciousness, or constricted pupils. So Alex lost consciousness and passed out. He was foaming at the mouth, and now we know Tammy was foaming too. So we know that Alex had a few of the same symptoms of someone who has organophosphate poisoning would have. We're not sure the details on Tammy's because we haven't got the autopsy report on that, and plus we don't have the 911 call, which with Alex's it gave us a kind of a good look into some of what was going on when he passed out. So plus we have the autopsy report. So with Tammy we don't have any of that yet, so we don't know the symptoms that she had. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if this is what they use, but I feel like organophosphate is a better guess than malachite as far as all the information we know about Alex and Tammy, and then what we know about organophosphate compared to malachite. So in my opinion, I would choose organophosphate. I don't know if it's organophosphate that they use, but if I had to choose between that and malachite, knowing what I just learned, I would say organophosphate seems to go more along with the symptoms and just something that you would think somebody would choose over malachite. Like if you compare everything that we just learned about both of the poisoning, I just feel like organophosphate would be more of just a better choice because there's more case studies to see the outcome, for them to know, basically to be sure that it's going to work. With malachite, how are they going to be so sure that that's going to work? Let me know what you guys think. So that's a little bit about organophosphate poisoning. And then you have, like I said, the cyanide I already talked about in another video, and that's another one. And then, so yeah, I don't know about malachite. I wanted, like I said, get a little bit more research. It makes a good story, like, oh, they bought their wedding rings, their malachite wedding rings, and it's like, so they could, that's their power, that's how they kill their so-called zombies, and they, that was special to them because that's what they used. And there's other things that probably the meaning that they get from this malachite, who knows. So if it's like a story where it's like, wow, then that makes sense, and it makes the story more, I don't know, it just fits more in with the whole story because of their wedding rings. But as far as the science behind it, I don't know, that wouldn't be my go-to after researching poisons and seeing how malachite works. That just wouldn't be the first poison I would say, like, yes, it was malachite. I don't know. I'm trying to make that connection, but it's just, I don't know, possibly. And like, who am I? I'm not a doctor or anything, but I have been looking into that. So I'll do a video on it once I feel like I have enough information, because it's just, the thing is if it was like this is where I'm struggling, because if it was a long-term poisoning, which it seems like most of the stuff with the malachite poisoning, it seems like it would be like a long-term thing that you would have to do, then they would have been having symptoms like for a while before, and I don't think any of them did have symptoms. Now, Alex did for like a week before. Yeah, he did. But Tammy, she was training for a marathon and stuff. So if they were poisoning her for like a month or so before, she would have had more symptoms, I feel like. That's why I'm having trouble making that connection. Really thinking that, I mean, I do think there's a possibility, but really saying, yes, this is what I think it is, I'm just having trouble. Because, I mean, once I heard about that, I definitely was like, yes, this might be what it is, And then when I started actually reading about it, it's like, man, I don't know, but who knows? And then, of course, I already did the video on cyanide poisoning, so that could be an option that causes pulmonary embolisms. And also carbon monoxide is another one. Alright guys, that's all I have for you on this one. Hopefully you guys are all having a wonderful day, and thank you guys all for watching. You guys are awesome. Seriously, I really appreciate you guys watching and supporting me. It means a lot. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Alright guys, have a good one. Bye.